Hey kids, and welcome. It is time once again for Conscious Embodiment Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. That is me. We're talking about August 14th through the 20th. And it's kind of like a mild week with a lot of moving parts. In fact, I don't know what your experience of August so far has been, Zoe, but I know that because July was a big, intense month with like large energetic events. And then I come into August and I promise you all a sort of an easier month, a slimmer time, not as bumpy and intense. And from an astrological perspective, that's sort of true because there are, the big honking shit from last month is in our rear view mirror. But what we have in August is just a lot of traffic with Mercury and Venus in their various retrograde postures. And so it's a different kind of intensity this month than the big transformative movement of the last couple of months. But so I would call this month and the week ahead kind of, I don't know, I sort of don't have an adjective after that, kind of intense and interesting. And so we're here to break it all down as we do each week. But first, the question. Thank you, Colleen. You heard me last week when I said I lost your email, and she sent it back in. So let me answer Colleen's question. It's a question I've answered before, but when a question comes in that I know is generally universal, I will certainly answer it again. In fact, Haley, you sent me a question last week. It's coming next week. I'm going to do Colleen's first. I'll hit yours next week. So keep the questions coming, kids, because I love them. So I'm going to read all of Colleen's email because it's cute. She says, hello, I follow you on Facebook and Instagram, and I love your weekly podcast. I particularly love when you curse on the podcast. Fuck yeah, Colleen. Yay. This is funny. I understand this with you. Like, I'm a cursor. Like, my mother said fuck as every other
Me
third
too.
word. Like, I mean, so.
I'm a cursor.
Yeah. So I they're natural for me, but I don't curse in session because I'm working and I have a kind of a decorum about my work in that regard that is not as important in the podcast because I'm being me, right? But in sessions, I reserve that for informality. And then every once in a while, I will find that 10, 15 minutes in, and I have said fuck like 3 or 4 times. And I stop and I say, do you curse a lot? And they always say yes.
You can feel it.
So it's really funny that I won't curse in 85, 90% of my sessions. But if you come to me and you have a potty mouth in your daily life, I'm going to curse. Anyway, your question about the Saturn return. She says she knows the things that she knows, like it happens every 29 years. It's about Saturn coming back to the exact placement of your birth. Yes. The effects last about 2-3 years. Yes, slightly no. 2 to 3 years is how long Saturn stays in the sign. I'll talk about that in a second. So March of next year is when my second Saturn return is happening. I have a lot of heavy shit in my chart, which she describes a little bit. And she's feeling a lot of isolation, self-imposed. No, not self-imposed, for the last 4 months. So my question is, how many months before the exact date do you begin to feel the effects, and how many months after? Roughly, of course, as I'm sure there are a lot of variables depending on the specifics of one chart. Yes. Saturn will spend 2 to 3 years in a sign, and there are astrologers who will say your Saturn return is happening the entire time Saturn is in the sign of your birth. as you probably know, if anybody's been following me long enough, I don't respond to what I call proximity transits as much as the exactness of the geometry. Why that is because I have 30 years of clocking astrological movement and how my body feels. And I will tell you, Colleen and everybody listening, my second Saturn return was in 2022. It started in March in terms of the exact date and ended in, I think, October in terms of the exact date. So by proximity, one could probably expect to feel some impact of the Saturn return a couple of months before those exact dates and a couple of months after them. But if you were in my head last year, or my body, or my house watching me go through Saturn return stuff, the intensity started the week it began. And the final week was also an intense week, after which I began to feel differently. So my assessment is the Saturn return goes from like the week or two before it's exact for the first pass, if there are 3, and will finish the week or two when it ends in terms of the exact geometry. That's how I would guide somebody to be paying attention to things that come up in the lesson learning department. And if you're feeling squeezed by Saturn moving into Pisces long before it hits, that also could be considered part of your Saturn return as well, though that's not exactly how I would present it if I were, say, teaching a class on Saturn returns. I would say focus on the time it's exact, because that's the juicy geometry as your body will be experiencing it. So I was debating whether to talk about this on the podcast or not, because it's such a background transit. It colors the year for sure, but I debated. So I'm going to talk about it because there it is. Part of why I might consider not sharing it is A, it's mild, and B, this is not a year of big triple transits. 2020, 2021, and 2022 were years with big movement and connection between planets in major geometry, and that's not the case this year. In fact, I would say the calendar year of 2023 is more impacted by last month's peak of Pluto squaring the nodes. That's a transit that is reverberative enough to cover the whole fucking year. You're welcome, Colleen. Right? Yeah. But Saturn and Chiron are holding a semi-square all of 2023. That means the teacher and the shaman are offering us all mild conflicts and obstacles to move through so that we will both heal, thank you, Chiron, and grow and learn. Thank you, Saturn. Semi-square, 45-degree angle is half a square. Square is conflict obstacles that will knock you on your ass. I always talk about the wall and the floor. Their fight never ends. The floor never stops telling the wall to lie down, and the wall never stops saying, fuck you, stand up. You're welcome, Colleen. Just trying to pepper in all the curses this week. I'm feeling playful. So even the subtleness of the geometry means that I could not mention this and nobody will be the wiser for it. It's not like this is geometry that's watch out for the semi-square. It's just part of our world this year where the potential for progress is going to feel a little frustrated. Delays that happen might hurt a little more because Chiron is the hurt places and Saturn creates delays to teach us. Procrastination might be something you're struggling with, and if that's the case, I will remind you that procrastination is a mental assessment of something that your body is expressing, where it might be that you're just moving at the right pace and your mind is telling you that you should be moving faster, and then it's a situation that's about wound and self-assessment that comes from, self-challenged views.
Anxiety.
Yes, thank you. That's the short form of what I was saying. Anxiety. So it's also just a reminder that we're never not doing our wisdom work and our healing work. So that semi-square hits today, Monday, August 14th. It also hit in the third week of February and will return at the last week in November. So just understand that this year includes some pace-setting frustrations around movement and delays and procrastination, and this transit is why. There are two important interactions this week in the retrograde cycles that we're moving through. One from Venus, who is retrograde, and one from Mercury, who has not yet turned around and is going through his pre-shadow. So let's start with the Venus transit. At the end of the day, this Venus retrograde cycle is profoundly healing. Chiron brings the healing, and Venus and Chiron are trining 3 times in her cycle. A trine, 120-degree angle, is like flow. You can think, we used to think of trines as, air quotes, good.
Yeah.
But
like a
better
good
to
angle
think,
to be
yeah. Trines, right. Trines good, squares bad.
Right.
But lots of good things can happen in squares and lots of shitty things can happen in trines. So let me reframe how you understand the geometry of a trine is about flow and participation between the two bodies. In a trine, both participants get to sing their song fully.
Yes.
You'll recognize this, though, through music. What's one of the most lovely harmonies to hear?
A third.
That's right. The
Classic
third and the fifth.
harmony.
The trine.
Yeah.
That's right. So I sometimes will use the example of, you know, those old-timey sinks that have the faucets as separate?
Oh, yeah.
I have that in my house. My house is from 1923.
Me too.
So.
Yeah, there's one here, one there.
Yeah, you got a faucet on the right, a faucet on the left, and that means, so the flow of hot and cold water are both equal in a trine.
Oh, great image.
Right. So that could be good, but it could just be flow. I get overwhelmed in some trines energetically. I get this thing I call moon sick, where I just feel a weird kind of disconnect from my energy. It feels a little sickly. It passes because it's energetic. And it's sometimes because of a trine just means more flowing energy. And my little body goes, there's too much energy. So a trine between Venus and Chiron means that love is flowing and healing is fully present. And when they mix in this trine, we are experiencing deep healings in the heart. So the good part of the trine could be lovely, positive healings. But what if you're going through something really difficult and Chiron brings a big flow of healing? It doesn't mean you're free of sensitivity and emotional pain if a healing is what's being triggered. So that trine is exact today, August 14th. But it also hit June 29th. So you can look back to late June and go, well, what was my healing experience? How was I feeling in my emotional body? What was available for me in the world of going into the heart and opening it up to release wounded consciousness? We are, of course, not done with this transit. This is the moment when, because Venus is retrograde, it could be a little bit more hidden or mysterious how it's playing out, because the unconscious is wide open. The wrap-up happens at the end of September, so things that came up in late June that might be returning now could have a third act as we're rounding out the month of September. And if you glance back and there was nothing, let it go. Not everybody is moving through a profound transformation of love. Some
that'd be
are.
Exhausting if you were continuously just always doing that,
That's true. No, that's true. And I like to say, in couples, a good relationship lasts because both of them aren't insane at the same time.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So in that regard, a Venus retrograde might have kicked your living ass, 2 years ago in Capricorn, where this one is less. Or the opposite may be true. So the message is, if you glance back and you don't see anything overt, let it go.
Yes.
It's not your big healing. But trust that if you are going through something right now that feels a little expansive in the healing realm, in your relationships or how you consider your finances, and there is a story that connects to late June, there'll be a third wrap-up you can count on around September 23rd. Now, we're not quite at the place where both Venus and Mercury are backward moving. Right now, it's just Venus, and Mercury is in his retrograde shadow. So it becomes important that if Mercury is triggering something, that he will return to us when he turns around later in the month, that we pay attention. And this week, it's really all about the healing, guys. Healing in the heart connects to Venus trining Chiron, and Mercury hitting Chiron in the great eliminator angle this Wednesday sets us up to have either conversations about things we're letting go of because we're healing a wound, or perceptions that change that either show us the wound we've got to work on. Something's gonna come up in your communication or perceptions as this week unfolds that will have something to do with stuff you're looking to let go of because you're healing a wounded consciousness that used to, trouble you in the past. What I love about this week and the doubling up of Venus and Mercury doing their retrograde cycles, but kind of separately like this, Venus is in the below right now, right? So our emotional bodies are more connected to the material that is typically tubed down below the surface for us to reach and access. So we begin the week with a kind of gentle and easy, I don't know how gentle and easy it'll be, but trine-oriented, meaning unstoppable and flowing way, that our hearts will be open to the healing experience that we're going through. And then 2 days later on Wednesday, the mind, Mercury, will hit Chiron, sort of asking Chiron, hey, Chiron, now that you just danced with Venus in her retrograde, what can you tell me about what I gotta let go of?
So it's like we'll learn about our heart, then learn about our mind, or like what's coming in our heart
perfect.
travels
Yes,
to the
but
mind.
yes, the
Okay.
but or the however or the thing to remember is that the mental awareness that comes as the week progresses, is it fully formed? It's Mercury saying, I got an idea about this, but I'm about to go retrograde, which means like, I think this is what we're up to, but check back with me in 3 and 4 weeks when I'm moving backwards, right? So, yes, the way you just presented it is perfect language, Zoe, but what we get in our thinking and perception and communication this week is subject to unconscious review late August, early September, when Mercury himself takes everything from these few weeks into his below journey, where we will make some mental sense out of the heart shifts that we're moving through now. So with all of this Venus retrograde stuff, having us in deep consideration of how we give and receive love, it's interesting to me that the new moon in Leo on August 16th, this Wednesday, has the retrograding Venus and black moon Lilith in conjunction very tightly. You got Venus at 18, Sun and Moon at 23, Black Moon Lilith at 24. That's a tight-assed, what's called stellium, gathering of two or more planets in the same area. So, last week, the retrograding Venus conjuncted Black Moon Lilith, opening up the access to shame, shadow, and stuff we prefer not to look at in matters of the heart, because that's what Black Moon Lilith offers. It's a point that allows us to sort of, you know, those spots in the earth where you can climb down in, and there's often like, little bacteria that live in, sulfur and shit like that. It's like the boiling
Like
spots
caves?
on the earth.
Like in little caves?
Not in caves, in actually like pits in the earth. Well, caves too. Whatever. The point is, there are points on the planet where you got access to material that's below the surface that's kind of, dicey. That's like Black Moon Lilith. Black Moon Lilith in each of our charts and in each of our psyches is the point in us where we're actually capable of climbing down into the shadow, like one of those caves or one of those pits that I'm imagining right now. So Venus conjuncted Black Moon Lilith last week, opening up some shadow material in that process. She also conjuncted the Sun last week. So we had some conscious awareness of what the unconscious process in the heart was. If this isn't sounding familiar to any of you, listen to last week's podcast, because that's what we talked about. So all of that juicy material of getting below the surface and being willing to be in the shadowy places gets funneled into this new moon. And in the new moon in Leo, we are getting ready to set intentions for all the joy, all the expressiveness, all the generosity that we can muster. Leo invented joy. And so if there's joy in relationships, Leo's responsible for that. If there's joy in sex, Leo's responsible for that. If there's a joy in being generous in your community, that's a Leo thing. Right? And think about the opposite between, we just had a full moon. Leo, if Leo's joy and Aquarius is the community, our job is to take our joy and give it to the community.
Let's party.
Yeah. So if we talked about nothing other than this in this new moon, I would have done my job setting you guys up for deeper, richer, more powerful intention setting. Because it's about how can I make my life and my sense of self more willing to be out there shining my light brightly. What dims our light more than anything else? Shadow, unconscious wounds we haven't, addressed. Shame around our sexuality, all these things that can inhibit somebody from shining their brightest light. Venus is helping us navigate in her retrograde cycle, and she's directly participating in this new moon. In fact, the new moon in this little stellium is trining Chiron, which means that the healing process that we're in is fully available in this new moon to take our intentions and sail them forward. Speaking of sailing our intentions we set forward, the new moon is also trining the North Node, which is the point that represents the sailing forward we're all attempting to do. Now, don't forget, Pluto is still T-squaring the nodes of the moon. Pluto is change at the level of death and rebirth. And by him squaring the nodes all year, but peaking these months, he's basically saying, you can get to the future you want to go to. But first, you got to actively kill off the past, square South Node, and actively work on the future through allowing deep change and transformation to take place so that you're ready to create the future you desire. So if Pluto is still holding that demand to process the past and the future through conflict and obstacle, and the new moon is trining the North Node that we're getting two messages right now, which is set deep intentions in the, self-focused, shine brightly, creative expression archetype of Leo, and you will be sailing into the desired future that you hold in your heart. But only if you're willing to let your perception of your past die so that you can create a new future that might be more difficult than you imagined. But the setup of the two, Pluto squaring the nodes and the new moon trining the north node, tells us that we can, in fact, create powerful self-expression in the world right now. And we have to keep in mind that much might have to change in order for us to hold, feel deserving of, and truly steward the desires we set intentions for. So it's definitely an important week, kids, from the perspective of the big news of the month, Venus and Mercury in their various cycles. The sun is doing some interesting things this week as well. There's like this square between the sun and Uranus tomorrow. So that energy is kind of the wild card. Anything can happen, bumping into things you didn't see or expect. That's important to note just because if anything gets shown to you early in the week that sort of says to you you're not on the right path, pay attention, because then when the weekend comes, the sun is going to sextile the north node and trine the south. That's just a moment where in the collective, our conscious awareness is feeling the right flow of like, I can see where I'm going. So if there's a little moment at the end of this week with all of this Venus and Mercury, kerfuffle and a new moon and a moment where Sun and Uranus square that kind of knock us on our ass if we need it, the weekend comes along and says, now I sort of see I'm on the right track. This is the sort of flow that I've been trying to cultivate and create. That's going to be the story for some people this week. And for shoresies, everybody's going to be working on things in your heart, things in your mind that need some healing and adjustment. Pay attention to the thoughts and the perceptions. Courageously dive into your feeling experience for Venus and Chiron to do their work and have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. First, I have like a dream question on a theme that keeps coming up. Everyone's ex-boyfriend / ex-partner keeps coming up in their dreams. Like, you know how there's dreams in hotels. We get a lot of those at the theme. I've also read lots with the ex-partner, and I don't know if you just have anything to say about that.
Sure, absolutely.
Like
let me ask you a
wants
question,
to
Zoe.
know.
Are you noticing that as of late increasing, or is this your general noticing over the years and months that we've been doing this?
No. Over the months, but also it's come up a couple times recently.
Well, if it's recently, it's because Venus is retrograde.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
Like, They say that Venus retrograde will bring back exes. And I got to tell you something. I have had DMs from some people where I thought, why on earth? Why on earth are you reaching out to me?
Juicy.
Oh,
I like
golly.
it.
So it would stand to reason that dreams of exes would be natural and organic to amplify while Venus is retrograde. But this is a very common dream trope. And what's most important to tell people about this is just consider that a dream about an ex is not about your ex. It's about how you relate to relating.
Sure.
And exes represent past consciousness of how we related in intimacy. And we're always looking to grow and shift in our psyche. And so much of that happens in the dream state. And so what more perfect symbol to rise up in a dream for a person to reflect that person's way of intimately relating is to have a dream of an ex. So very often those dreams are just helping and assisting the grieving process, the separation process, or the process of investigating how a person relates to intimacy, and a dream of an ex gives the raw material for the dreamer to have that consideration.
Cool. All right, so then let's just dive into the dream for the week. We have an email dream from Karen. So she says, I had a dream a few days ago about having choices through doors. I know this is a profound answer I've been looking for, but I wasn't sure how to interpret it.
Okay.
I was with two friends, one female and one male. We were walking down the street, and all of a sudden, we were in like a haunted house. My friends went straight where this room was well lit with light. There were shadows and creatures coming at us, and I was shocked and surprised this was happening. I saw a door on the right, and I opened it and went in to see if this was a better way of existing. It was very dark, right?
I want to know where that door is.
Yeah, it was very dark, and shadows were lurking everywhere, but I couldn't see them. I could just feel them. It scared me, and I ran out to my friends in the lighter room. We were going through the shadows and obstacles when I woke up. What can I interpret from this?
Oh, my God. First of all.
Well, we're almost done.
I'm sorry. Well, she said she woke up. Sorry.
She woke up. But I just wanted to add her tidbit because I know that can be helpful.
Yeah, always.
So she goes, I'm going through obstacles now and knowing my life is about change. I just don't know where or when. I keep waiting for answers and my answers are arriving. I just can't interpret them most of the time. Thanks. I felt that part was relevant.
Well, no, it is relevant. It is relevant. And the reason I'm laughing is because the dream is literally about I can't know directly the changes I'm going through, but I have to go through them with as much courage and willingness to go into unknown shadow material as possible. So the dream is I don't really know what's happening and I got to go through the door anyway. That's why I laughed, Karen. So yes, doors are about choices. There's something unknown behind the door and we get to choose. Go through this door, do not go through this door.
Right.
We get to choose, do we knock? Are we curious? So I love the simplicity of the symbol in terms of helping Karen understand. And she already knows this because she said so in her email. She's very clear what dreams about doors mean. I love that she's with two friends because then we are looking at a binary consideration. And one is male, one is female. So one is expressing the doing element and one is expressing the being element. Just like we get excited when there are three of anything in a dream because it considers the dynamic trinity that's so powerful in consciousness.
Right.
Two is binary. Two is ones and zeros, yes or no, up or down, light or dark, and masculine, feminine, doing, being. In fact, if you think of Karen as the witness of the dream, there is a trine. There's a transcendent third. It's Karen and her masculine principle and her feminine principle in a perfect triangle, whole and complete, but being experienced as separate. Walking down the street just means we're thinking about Karen's pedestrian walk through life, right? She's not driving down the street, so driving would suggest a kind of greater social experience of moving through life. When we're walking in a dream, we're in the very private aspect of how we consider our walk through life. Now, I love this, that we're suddenly in a haunted house. Because it doesn't matter that the house is haunted, it's still a dream house, which means it's a sense of self symbol. Mm-hmm. But I think it's the shadow material. Karen even uses the word shadow describing the creatures that were coming at her later in the dream, right? So walking into the haunted house is akin to Karen's current, I was going to say willingness, but I don't suspect it's about willingness. It's about undeniability that this is a moment of scary, unknown stuff, which is sort of what you could say that a haunted house is, right? A haunted house means shit's going to happen that's going to scare you, and it's going to happen when you don't know it and expect it. Mm-hmm. Have you ever done the Universal Studios Halloween?
I hate that crap. I fucking hate it. I've gone to Not Scary Farm and I had a terrible time.
They're
I just,
awful.
for some reason, I actually get scared and I will scream.
No, I'm awful. And first of all, I have a ridiculous startle impulse. I am easily startled. And I went to this in 2015 with my boyfriend at the time because he and his friends loved it. And I was like, this is fucking torture.
Yeah. Why do that?
Why do this? I get startled enough just walking down the street and having somebody say something that I didn't expect to hear. What's that? So back to Karen and her suddenly scary haunted house. It's like, all right, honey, you're there suddenly, which means to me, the sudden appearance of the haunted house means we're not in choice anymore. Like Karen doesn't have the choice to go into this shadow work. Suddenly she's there. Mm-hmm. So that means you're in it, honey. You're in the shadow work. What's the most beautiful part of the dream is that Karen goes to the door that's going to bring her to the deep shadow. Mm-hmm. She leaves the safety of the light because she's curious about what might happen if she goes deeper into the scary material. And what does she say, Zoe, or ask? What's the motivation for going through that door?
She opened it and went to see if it's a better way of existing.
Yes, it is, Karen. Again, I'm so juiced up by the dream because you have to understand something, Zoe. Interpreting dreams, at least in the way that I do it, the things that people say in their, either telling of the dream, whether it's written or spoken to me, the things that they say count. Mm-hmm. Just like it was important to you to add that distinction that she added at the end of the email, that I was like, oh, what? Is there more? Yes. That she says, I went through this door because I think there might be a better way of existing, is just juicy. Because indeed, there is no better way of existing than facing our scary, unknown demons below the surface. Because until we do, we cannot heal them. And if we don't heal them, then all of our behaviors in life are coming from wound, and we can't stop that. Unless we go into the scary place. There's also some suggestion of doing and masculine principle because the door is on the right. Mm-hmm. That to me says active shadow work is asked for. Left would be more passive or creative or holding or containing. That might be a juicy dream to interpret if the left side of the door was where the scary shadow work is, but that's not where it was. It was the right side, which suggests take some action, move into the darker, shadowy places in you, even though it's scary. So all of the beautiful language that Karen offered about, like can't see the shadows, but can feel them. It's dark. She gets scared and she ran out. It's like, yeah, that's the shadow work. And I guess I'll sort of wrap up with saying, so that Karen's not misinterpreting what I'm saying, I don't think this dream is saying you got to do something you haven't done yet. Back to the suddenly. Suddenly the haunted house appears. I'm in it. I go to the door. That to me says, it's like, Karen, you're in it. You're actively going through the door where it's scary.
Yeah.
Because you're engulfed in this process in the way that suddenly I'm in a haunted house. And we don't get to know. That's the juicy sort of work, is diving in and not necessarily knowing where we're going to, come out or what the scary shadows are. And I'll leave you with this, given that Mercury's about to go retrograde and Venus already is retrograde. The part of us that wants to know is irrelevant. It's just our thinking mind that's sort of designed to keep us safe, and it thinks that if it knows what's going on, we'll be safe. Mm-hmm. But that's bullshit. The mind is irrelevant to most of our processes. Outside of, we use our minds to perhaps do formal shadow work. Like if you take my shadow class, you're going to be triggered by the homework questions that I provide. That's the mind, because the mind reads the questions and the mind answers the questions. But the questions are not designed to get your mind to figure shit out. The questions are designed to trigger you with your mind so that the process my classes take you through can do their work. And then assessing what's happening or trying to, air quotes, figure it out is often valueless. Mm-hmm. And so if there's a message in this dream, it's just keep going. Dive into deeper, scary places, even without knowing why or wherefore, and trust that you're in a process that will, in fact, lead you to a better way of existing.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.